Welcome to Hey Therapist. I'm your host, Leslie Ross. With me is my producer, Jay Wesley Lindley. Let's get mental. We did not have an episode last week because of poor time management and storms and things that happened. We're going to catch up on it this week and get right back into it. And one of the things that I get a lot of questions about, and it's kind of, the big thing for everyone is relationships. But I get a lot of questions about it from clients, from friends. Why don't my relationships work? What am I doing? What's going on? What's that other person thinking? How should I handle that? So we are going to talk about relationships and attachment styles and just kind of start a little series going on. And I thought about calling this one Love, a Cautionary Tale, but I'm saving that title. So I'm not real sure what this one's going to be called, but you guys will know because when it's released, it'll have a title. I'm just not sure what it's going to be yet. I am going to get a little personal on this one because I feel like it's necessary. As a therapist, we are kind of taught not to be personal, but I'm not in a therapist role. So I can talk about my life and it not be inappropriate like it would be if there was a client sitting across from me. I've dated a lot in my life. I'm not a young person, so I get to say that, and it doesn't sound terrible, but I have dated a lot, and I have lots of good dating stories that are just doozies. And we're not really talking about that today, but when I was sitting down writing some of this stuff out and getting my prep done, I was thinking about, all of the things that you encounter when you're dating. The people you don't connect with, and then the people that connect with you and you don't connect with. Because again, we're not for everybody, right? We've already talked about that. And if you haven't, go back and listen to that episode. We're not for everybody. You're not going to like everybody. You're not going to have that attraction to everybody. And sometimes you think you do, and it may be going well. And I was thinking of this date that I was on where it was going really good. And I have short hair right now. It goes back and forth. I grow it out. I cut it off. I grow it back. Anyway, I had longer hair at the time. And I was with a guy and we were looking at an old picture, and he told me that first off, he told me that he didn't think women should have short hair. Like that was his first comment that I was like, oh, ew. But there's a lot of men that think that way. Like there's a lot of men that prefer longer hair, which is fine if it's your preference. And also you don't get to tell people what they do with their hair, but it's his preference. So I was like, okay, that's cool. But everything else was going good. So we went and had drinks after dinner. In that conversation, he tells me that, women, he said, something to the effect of, I don't understand why women feel the need to come home and just put on sweats and a big t-shirt to be around the house. I don't know why they don't just put on lingerie. And I laughed. And I looked at him and realized he was serious. And I was like, so you're putting on a smoking jacket? Like what are we doing here? What decade are we in? And I said, we come home and put on whatever we want, because if we're coming home, that means we've worked all day and we want to be comfortable, and we're probably grown ass people who are paying our own bills. So I get to put on a t-shirt and joggers. Like if you earn it, I may throw on some lingerie every now and then, but that shit's uncomfortable. I want bra off. I'm not putting another one on. Like it's not going to happen, bro. So I politely let myself in that date. And the scary part is he did have a daughter, which I was like, oh, I hope you don't I hope she has a really strong mother who says, don't listen to your father. There's a reason we're not married anymore. Like, because I feel like that probably played a role, but I don't know. But that's dating and putting yourself out there. But what we're going to really talk about is that love and attachment. It does lead directly from some of our previous episodes where we talked about self-love and self-compassion and choosing yourselves. And it's okay to put love above everything else. It's okay to put someone else above everything, above your needs, and put your needs on the back burner and to accommodate someone else in a relationship. And that may be your relationship style and your attachment style. And today we're going to talk about those things. And in the next few episodes, we're going to talk about it. So today we're going to kind of get an overview. We're going to talk about attachment styles and what that looks like. And then we're going to break each style down in the upcoming episodes, so you can really figure out what you are and kind of how to move through that if you have an issue. I have a lot of single friends who are great men and women. And the problem is finding that match, because we all have our issues, our problems. When somebody says, what's wrong with you? Why are you single? And it could be not much, but I haven't found someone who is our match. And the thing is, everyone has something that is wrong with them. Like, we all have our flaws that someone else, it just may give them giant ick factor, where the next person finds it adorable. Like, they think it's cute that you message them all day, which is probably their attachment style if it's not equal. But, you know, we a lot of times find it hard to find someone who can match our energy. What are you looking for? Are you just out there in them streets, like just getting it in everywhere? And which is fine. Like, I'm not mad about it. Like, it's fine. If that's the stage that you're in, and if that's your mode right now, as long as you are honest with people about that, you do you. Have fun, be safe, make good choices, all of those things. But if you're out there looking for love, looking for that partner, that companionship, you need to match that energy. It's talking about it on all of those levels. What are you looking for? Are you wanting kids? Do you already have kids? What is your emotional attraction to this person? What is your physical attraction to this person? Are you have the same mentality in financial things? You know, and you should have the same mentality, or at least an agreement on what I call the fundamental 3 F's. And that's finances, friendships, and fornication, or fucking, whichever one you prefer. And that we'll talk about that as a whole other episode. But those 3 things play a pivotal role in your relationship, because they're the ones that will create the most issues on down the line. If you're not physically compatible, or you have completely different sex drives, and no one's okay with just taking care of themselves or sorting themselves out, as other countries call it, which I've learned very, very recently that's the phrase that's used. If you're not friends, like if you don't even like each other, you shouldn't be together. And it may be that you used to like each other and you don't anymore. You probably still shouldn't be together. Like, we don't idealize people for what they were. We recognize people for who they are. And if they're wanting to change, and if they're wanting to move through it, and if they're actively doing that, and you're willing to sit by and support them in that, perfect. But if they don't want to change and you are unhappy, it's time to go. And finances is something that always comes up too. I don't make a lot of money. Like, let me start with that. Like, I live in rural Oklahoma, or Oklahoma, period. So like, I make decent money for where I live, and I make more money than a lot of people in other jobs. And sometimes that is an issue when the female makes more than the male. Unless you have a strong man who's like, nah, I'm cool with it. Like, let's roll. If you're good, I'm good. Like, just because if the guy had made more money, it's never an issue, right? If you're dating someone, if you're a female dating a male, and the male usually has no problem being the one that pays for things, or if they want to go out somewhere in particular, they pay for you to go and they want to do the things. But when a woman does that, it's kind of taboo. It's a little unacceptable. And that only usually comes from insecure man. If you are good with yourself, and I'm good with you, and I've made it real clear that I have no issues paying because I want to go to this particular place to eat, or I want to go on this vacation, or whatever it is, I'm going to pay. And I have no problem. I don't look at you as less. I don't think anything about it, because I'm going either way. I'm dating someone because I want to have company. So if I need to pay for you to go with me, I will. It's not a problem. Because there's probably these other things that you are bringing to the relationship that are valuable to me, that don't have dollar signs attached to them. So, you know, you have to think about those things. You want to know those things right up front. Now, I'm not saying you go to a date with a list of 30 questions, but you might. I mean, if you word it correctly, if you go in with the right attitude and you figure out ways to ask those questions, I got 21 questions. I mean, it's one of those things that, you know, the person that you're dating, if they're on the same wavelength, if they're on that same energy, if they are looking for a partner, they're going to appreciate those questions, because let's figure it out real quick, because we too old to be wasting anybody's time. And you know, the world of dating apps has destroyed dating as we used to know it. I mean, dating's never been easy. It's a weird dance of your being on your best behavior versus being authentic. And how much of a weirdo nerd can I be? Because I'm a bit of a weirdo nerd. Like, I'm pretty cool. Don't get me wrong. But I'm also a big nerd. Like, I love me some Lord of the Rings and some Hobbits and some Harry Potter. And I play Xbox and give me some first shooter. But also Hogwarts Legacy. Oh my God. If y'all haven't played that yet, you get the game. It's amazing. But that's me. Like, I'm a big old nerd and I have no problem being that person. And sometimes people have a problem accepting that person because they're not used to it. But I'm cool with me. But it's this weird, also this weird thing of like settling versus searching. Like, a lot of people get really sick of dating and they find someone who checks just enough boxes that they think they can eventually be happy. But you won't be. I can tell you won't be. Eventually, you're going to build resentment. Also, with dating apps comes this belief by men and women that there's all of these endless opportunities out there because there's all these people on the app. And if you've ever used a dating app, you know that you might match or swipe left or right. I can't even, it's been so long since I've used a dating app. I can't even remember and I don't want to. I can't, I live in an area where I'm not using one now because my God, I would see people that I went to high school with and clients and no, I'm not getting on a dating app where I do unless I put my radius way out. But maybe Dallas. Maybe I should put my radius for Dallas. I mean, a lot of them come up here anyway, but Though I digress. But, there's all these people and you're swiping, and you think all of those people are also going to be attracted to you. And again, not the case. They might, but the likelihood is pretty slim because they may be out there going, nope, I can do better. And we're making these snap judgments off of one picture. And when you have people in like my age range, which is the 40s, we'll just stick it there. Some of those men, listen, this is a side note as well, but listen, if you are a man on a dating app, for the love of God, have one of your girlfriends who has great social media take some pictures for you. We don't want to see your fish. We don't want to see you shirtless, most likely, at least not in that first one. I need to see a picture of you smiling. And I need to see a picture of you without a hat on. Don't be catfishing. Like, don't make me think you got hair and then you've got the horseshoe. Like, come on now. Take the hat off. Give me a smile. Because if you're not smiling and showing your teeth in your dating app, we all assume you have terrible teeth. And you might, which is okay. That's all fixable, right? We can fix those things. But I need to know. Like, put it out there. Let's be honest about what we're working with. But seriously, no woman ever wants to see your fish. Nobody cares. Even if she is outdoorsy, even if she may want to go fishing with you, that is not the picture we want to see. So,
and that's not a metaphor.
It's not a metaphor.
Actual fish.
Actual fish. Like, you can look it up and see how many is on there. Like, no, just stop with the fish. Like, if you're on a fishing boat and you have a cute picture, fine. But nobody wants to see you standing there so proud of your fish. Nobody cares. The other men are not looking at this. I mean, they may be. In fairness, we may have a buddy that's swiping through looking for pictures too, but because everybody that's on a dating app has someone else that has been on their dating app making matches. Because my sister used to love to do it for me. Like, that was one of her favorite pastimes when she came to visit, was going through dating apps. But just remember when you're on there that not everybody's for you. You're not for everyone. And there may be something on that profile. Like, if you're attracted to it, fine. I mean, they got to give you a little bit of a tingle. Like, yes, attraction can build and those things do grow. So if they give you just a little bit of a tingle and they have all this other information in there that's great, give them a shot. You never know. My last, I'd say, big relationship, I've dated, but my last big relationship, as much as I hate to admit it, was one of the best ones that I had, even though it broke me a little bit. But he did make me feel like I was everything. And in the end, it was not great, but that's how it goes. I've been listening to a lot of Taylor Swift lately because we went to saw her on the Eras tour. Also amazing. But there's one of her songs, and the name of it's escaping me now, but it's the, oh my God, I can't even think of the name of the song now, but it's going to be forever or it's going to go down in flames. Blank Space, I think is the actual name of it. Anyway, And that's the truth with any relationship. It's going to be forever or it's going to go down in flames. And even if it ends well, like even if everyone's on the same page and we end for valid reasons, it's still kind of flamey. Like it's still terrible and it hurts. It's the saying of you find it when you're not looking for it, right? Because I wasn't looking. I wasn't out there. I mean, I was out there dating and doing all those things, but I wasn't looking. Like it was, especially not in the situation that this one came up. But it was love at first sight. It was all the cliche things. Time stood still, blah, blah, bullshit. It's going to be forever. But it wasn't, obviously, because here I am talking about being single. But, one thing that's important from any relationship you're in is to come out with minimal regrets. And, if you are sabotaging, you're doing all these other things, you may have a lot of regrets coming from that. But, you want to come out with minimal regrets. And I think my only regret in that is really fighting for it in the end, because I was the only one fighting. You don't want to be fighting for it alone. And I think it's something that we all do, though. We put our heart out there and we're hoping that someone will hold on to it and protect it and do everything that we're doing for them. And sometimes it's just not that way. Sometimes they don't feel the same way. And sometimes you can love someone and they can love you and it just doesn't work. And that's when it's really painful. And when you not only love them, but are in love and they love you, but life gets in the way. T. Swift also says, there'll be happiness after me and there's happiness because of me. Both things are true, or both things are in our history or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, I'll stop with the lyrics. Oh, I say that, I may not, but sometimes relationships get bigger than both of you. And when you're not prepared for it, it goes badly. Also, you want to come out with, what did I learn? And so what do you learn from your relationships? And that's how your relationship style and your attachment style can grow and change, is what did you learn from this last one? I had a very long relationship where my needs were far from being met because my ex-husband had become verbally, financially, physically abusive. And I had to put all of my needs aside to be in survival mode. And that one, I learned a whole lot. Hell, that's its own episode itself, and we'll get there eventually. Another thing that one of the things that I learned in that relationship is the disrespect sometimes should be all you need to be gone. And that's how most abusive relationships start. They start as disrespect, those digs, those hatefulness, when they start isolating you, when they start talking bad about your friends or your family who are not an issue, but they don't want them to be involved because they know that they're acting out. That behavior you allow to escalate, and no matter how many excuses you have for it, even if it's valid, like in that relationship, his father had died unexpectedly and he just kind of lost his mind. We talked about those late life mental health breaks and those things, and alcoholism became a huge thing. A gambling addiction was a big thing. And so I understood it because I do what I do, right? I understood it, but that shouldn't have been allowed to happen. And I stayed way longer than I should have because at a certain point it was very hard to leave because of the financial stuff. But, I did finally hit my breaking point. I hit that wall and it was time to go. But in this last one, it was really more about paying attention to actions, because they may be saying one thing and then just showing you they don't want to. Because if they can for other people and they won't for you, that's a big sign. And again, they may have very valid reasons. They may have good excuses. You may understand what's happening. You also want someone who wants to contribute to your happiness. And when they want to contribute to your happiness, they will do whatever they can within reason. You shouldn't be with someone because they make you happy or because they are your happiness. They should be value added. You want someone who's value added. Like, you should be happy with yourself and in your situation. And I'm not saying that you're going to be 1,000% happy with your life. Nobody is. That's why we keep learning and growing and striving and doing the things we do. But they should be value added. And they may say with their words that they want you, and it may be true, but their actions don't back that up. And there were times in that one where I knew he was in his head or super stressed or wanted to be alone or didn't want to do whatever it was. But he would tell me that he did, but still make excuses. And that's when it's really hard because that may be true. It may be true. And also, you have needs that need to be met. I also knew he was a bit of self-sabotager. And I knew that was part of his attachment style, which led me to understand it and tolerate it more. Again, doing what I do, I know when someone is struggling with other things, be it work, family, old shit coming up, unexpected events, whatever it is, I don't make a big deal about it. I roll with it. If I'm invested in you and you are invested in me, then I can tolerate a lot. I can roll with it. We can do this. We can make it work. But that has to be mutual, right? We all need it to be mutual. That's the thing sometimes with grown people and dating, you have to roll with it. And when you're in a relationship, it is easier to accept things and move with it. Now, if some of these things had happened and like we had just started dating, like you may be vested, you may really like this person, but you're only, a couple weeks in and shit explodes. It's okay to be like, yeah, I'm out. I mean, it's okay to say you're out at any time if that's not what you want and if that's what your instinct is telling you and you know that this is not good for your mental health or it won't end well. It's okay to call it. And it's much easier in the beginning than it is when you're invested. But life is very short. And when you find someone you could possibly build a life with, arguing or being pissy or nitpicking someone, whatever it is that could very well be part of your attachment style, you bring that into your relationship. And most of that comes from how you were raised. And if these patterns aren't healthy, it won't end well for you as far as relationships go. And you may repeat behaviors and be that person who's like, why don't relationships work for me? Well, why don't they? What is happening within you that's creating you to either attach to people you shouldn't, or the fear of attaching to someone you should, or you're afraid to attach to someone you would have to be vulnerable with because you have all of those emotions too. So it's safer to attach to someone who you don't care that much about because you won't get hurt. All of these things happen. Sometimes people really do portray themselves differently in the beginning, but eventually their true self does come out. Just remember, you will never be too much for the right one. You can be a lot, but you're never going to be too much for them. And they may have times where they say, hey, you're being a lot. Take it down. And if you have a good, healthy relationships and you know that about yourself, that you can be a lot, when someone's like, listen, I need you to just a couple notches down, you're going to be like, all right, fine. Because you know that it's coming from a genuine place. You know that they care about you and maybe you are being a lot. And in your head, you're being a lot. You don't want anybody to call you on it. I mean, we never want anybody to call us on it when we're being extra. But if you're with that person that wants to help you be a better person, and maybe you even had a conversation, listen, when this happens, I do this and it's a lot and I know that I can be annoying. So if I'm doing that, I give you permission to say, you're being pissy, try again. Or whatever it is you come up with in your relationship that helps you moderate that behavior. And the first couple of times they do it, you may be like, oh, meh. I really don't want you to call me about shit. But you get used to it and it becomes part of your relationship because you know it's out of love. You know they just want you to be a better part of yourself. We look at this and most people can think back to times that they thought they would never get over something, that a terrible thing happened, a relationship happened, a breakup happened, and you thought, I'm never going to get over this. And now they're just someone who you can't remember the name of, or you remember dating them and you look back at the relationship like, oh my God, like I really? That guy? Like like this guy or this gal? Like what was I thinking? And you were thinking what you needed to at the time. You were in a different mindset. Like we've talked about before, go back and listen to those previous episodes about how we get into certain mindsets, and we cannot judge our past behaviors on future knowledge or even present knowledge. Because that's why they say hindsight's 2020, because we can all look back and go, holy shit, what was I thinking? Well, you were thinking whatever you needed to think at the time. You were thinking with whatever was going on at the time. You were thinking with those emotions and that age that you're in. But one of the things we do want to do, if we are trapped in a cycle, if we are having a hard time, if we do catch ourselves acting a different way, is figure out why. And so we're going to talk about attachment styles, because it really does play a role in the way that we relationship, just like our love languages do. And yes, I used relationship as a verb because it is an action. You should be very intentional about your relationships. And so attachment theory was founded by John Bowlby, I think is how you say it, in the 50s. And then Mary Ainsworth expanded on it. And it outlines how your bond with your primary caregivers set the foundation for how you navigate relationships through life. And the theory states that the primary goal of a baby, of an infant, is to maintain closeness to caregivers. And this was a necessity during evolution, right? Like, you had to stay close. You had to be mindful. You had to watch them and learn, which is where anxiety comes from, right? Is where we learn fight or flight. It's where we learn how to react. It's how we learn how to relationship, and it's how we learn how to love. And, the infants and the young children, they learn the strategies that would allow them to stay close, to protect themselves, or to survive. So we have 4 types of attachment styles. We have the secure attachment, where individuals are self-assured, they're direct, they're responsive, they're intentional about their actions and words in a relationship. We have avoidance, and this is also known as dismissive. They're detached or seemingly uninterested. And these are anxious avoidant children. Like, an avoidant child will be a little more anxious about it. And we have our anxious attachment style, which is also known as preoccupied. And these individuals are self-doubting. They're pretty sensitive. And, these are kind of anxious, ambivalent children. Like, they look like they don't care, or they want to care. They're the ones that are really going to question everything they do. And then we have fearful, which is also known as disorganized. And this is kind of our combination of anxious and avoidant. They are our self-sabotagers. They are unpredictable. They isolate. They can be avoidant. They can be all in at once, and then they are nowhere to be found. And so it's kind of a combination. And those avoidant, anxious, and disorganized are all considered insecure attachment styles. So you have secure and insecure, but within insecure, you have the avoidant, the anxious, and the fearful. And so our romantic relationships are likely to reflect whatever early attachment style we created. So the social and emotional responses of the caregiver to a child lead a person to have those same expectations in later relationships, in friendships, romantic ones, work. Like, your attachment style flows into everything. And you get those expectations from when you are a kiddo, from when you're growing up, learning and watching. And it's why, the new studies have found that parents who are divorced and have healthy co-parenting relationships, the child has better outcomes than parents who stay together for the kids, if you will. You hear people say that all the time, well, we're staying together for the kids. Okay, so your kid is learning your relationship. They're learning how to relationship like you are. So they're probably not learning intimacy. I say intimacy as in romantic, like caring about each other, taking care of each other, doing those things, not sex. Your kid should not be learning sex from you unless you are teaching the birds and bees. They should not be watching you have sex, which also happens in very terrible households. So, we want them to learn about that relationship intimacy, not the sex part between your spouses. Like, your children should not know about your sex life. They shouldn't. It's gross. They should know you have one as they get older. Like, yeah, we have yes, we have these romantic times, but they don't need to know details. Stop. If you're doing that, stop. They don't need to know. But they are learning how to interact with someone they care about, because in their eyes, you're mommy and daddy and you love each other, and mommy and daddy should love each other. So if this is what loving each other looks like, if arguing all the time, if nitpicking, if griping at each other, if complaining about each other, if not spending time together, if sleeping in separate rooms when you don't have mixed schedules. The only time that I'm ever on board, and I know some people say that they have it in their life and it's great and it works out for them, and if you like it, I love it. If it's working, fine. You can sleep in separate rooms if you work different shifts, because you don't want to be waking the other one up and it makes it hard for everybody. But you should, when you're not working, spend time in the same bed, because there's also enough studies that show that rhythm that you have with each other when you're sleeping also builds intimacy and connection. So if you're doing these things in front of your kid, that's what they're learning. So they're going to grow up to expect their partner to talk down to them. They're going to grow up to expect their partner to never be pleased with them. They're going to grow up in whatever you are presenting. And so if you are unhappy together and you've got kiddos watching you, you better fake it. I don't care if you have twin beds in your room or a bed that you pull apart at night. Like, you better fake it, because your children are learning how to be adults by watching you. They learned it by watching you. No one younger than 25 is going to get that reference, but it's fine. But if they can consistently rely on you guys, your parents, to fulfill their emotional needs, they're likely to develop that secure attachment styles. They'll see relationships as a safe place where they can express their emotions freely, and it's not ever punitive. It's not ever used against them. On the other hand, these insecure attachment styles develop if a child had that strained bond with their caregivers. And it can happen when the child learns they really may not be able to rely on their caregivers to fulfill their basic needs, or to give them comfort, to take care of them when they don't feel good or they're sad or any of those things. And I'm not discounting the need and ability for a child to self-soothe. Children should learn how to self-soothe. They should learn how to take care of their own emotions to an extent. But when they're asking for help and they need help and they're tearful about something and they go to a parent and the parent tells them to suck it up, instead of going, wow, that sounds really hard, but let's look at alternatives, or what do you need from me, or how can I help? Because again, we need to teach them to self-soothe. We need to teach them to regulate. We need to teach them to come up with a plan. But if your idea of teaching them is telling them to suck it up or pull themselves up by the bootstraps and just move on, and we all have problems, well, shit, they're kids. Like, teach them how big it is. Like, it may not be a big issue. To them it is, though. So teach them about it. Teach them how to move through it. Teach them how to not have that issue again, instead of telling them to suck it up. Having said that, I know all y'all are thinking, well, I tell my, fine. If you're on the playground and your kid falls down and they're crying and there's no blood, they're not really hurt, it just scared them, or they're embarrassed, talk about that. It is absolutely reactionary parenting, because the kid doesn't know how to act. They don't know how to react to it. Like, they may be scared, and they're going to look to you, because every kid does when they fall down, when they hurt them. They look at the parent or the caregiver, whoever's there with them. And if you're just like, you good? You good? You good? They're going to be like, okay, I'm good. And they're going to go back to doing what they're doing. If they're actually injured, we have to take care of that, right? But if they're, scared or they're embarrassed and they can't stop, then you say, listen, you're good. Look around. Look, you're good. No broken bones, no broken blood. Why is it like, maybe you're embarrassed because other people saw you fall? But you know what? I've seen 3 or 4 kids out here fall. Haven't you? Yeah. Okay. Did they laugh at you or they do anything? No. I mean, and somebody may make fun of you, like, oh my God, walk much? And you go, nope, just learning, and you teach them how to respond. But if you're not giving that comfort, then you could be creating this insecure attachment style. And if all of that goes unchecked, And we don't recognize it within ourselves that we have these unhealthy styles, and we don't recognize it where we're reacting to people in a certain way, and we don't recognize how we are in a relationship. Then you may be that person who's older and in having good relationships or not so good relationships, going, I don't understand. What am I doing wrong? Because this is how I attach. This is how I treat people. Why aren't they treating me the same? Well, because everyone has different love languages, and we'll talk about those in different episodes. But everyone is different, and so you have to be internally secure with who you are and how you are in a relationship. If you're that person that notices you get jealous, you're afraid of being alone, maybe you get really anxious when someone doesn't message you back right away. Like if you're messaging and it's their common practice to message you back right away and they don't, and it's hours, and you're an anxious attachment person, because this used to be me, you're like, oh shit, what'd I do wrong? Did I make them mad? Did I upset them? What's going on? You don't know that their phone died. You don't know that they got called into a meeting at work and all of that, which is where good communication comes from. If you are people who communicate all the time, all day or day, and you're going to be in a meeting where you can't talk for the next 3 hours, tell your partner that. Listen, going to the meeting, we talked about it already, because you've probably already had a conversation, because most of the time those things don't pop up. Heading into that meeting, I won't be able to talk to you for a while. Message you when I get done. I dated a guy when I was doing therapy full time. I would do 7 to 8 hours of therapy, trauma-based therapy a day, back-to-back sessions with people with like big T trauma. Most of that meant that I had about a 5 to 10 minute gap between clients. So that was enough time for me usually to refill my water bottle or get me something else to drink, go to the bathroom and sit back down and get ready for the next client, read notes from their previous session, whatever it was that I needed to do. And I had a guy I was briefly dating, and he would get very upset with me that I wouldn't message him back. Like, why haven't you messaged me in like 3 hours? Because I'm fucking working, bro. Because I'm working. And then it was the same gentleman who would get mad because at the end of the day, after doing all that I had done all day and just talked to people non-stop for 8 hours, literally non-stop, he would get mad because I didn't want to talk on the phone. And I'm like, bro, no, this is not going to work, because he had a very anxious attachment style. And I don't. I used to, but I've done a lot of work to not. But I can't handle that. Maybe someone else could have been more reassuring with him. Maybe someone else would have had the patience to say, okay, I can accommodate this, but we got to work on it. I did not have enough attachment to him. Like, it wasn't that good. There was not that much of attachment that I wanted to make that work, that I wanted to say, listen, this is something we need to work on, because I can't accommodate this part for you. And it's not a healthy part to have either. You are going to be in those relationships where you talk all of the time. My last one, real relationship, we talked all of the time. Whether we were working, we talked all of the time. And even though he's like, I'm not that person. I'm not that person. He was that person. Listen, bro, stop lying. You were that person. I was that person. And I'm not usually that person. But it was easy and it flowed and it was natural and nothing was pressed on it. And when we couldn't talk, nobody got mad. If we did have gaps of conversation, there was no, oh my God, what's happening? Oh my God, where are you at? Oh my God, why aren't you? It was just like, all right, cool. Somebody got busy. No one bothered with that. But it's important that you understand those. And also, when we get into some of the other attachment styles, you may be that person who finally gets with someone who has a secure attachment style, and they're not fighting with you all the time. There's no conflict. There's no drama. They're not starting shit. They're not being jealous. And you're like, this relationship is boring. Or they don't care enough. Well, why aren't you fighting with me? Why don't we argue? We never fight. We should never fight. I'm not saying you're not going to argue with your person, but if you're fighting all the time with somebody and making up and fighting and making up, that is not healthy. Stop. You should not. That is your trauma. That is your anxiety. The need for chaos is a trauma response. And if you are looking for that, and if you need that, You need to work on you. On the other hand, maybe you don't feel like you deserve someone good or a good relationship, that you just aren't good enough to be with someone who treats you well. Those are behaviors that most likely stem from your basic emotional needs not being met and developing an unhealthy working model. I had a friend who told me a story. They grew up, the parents would cook themselves steaks. They would cook themselves steaks and eat them and tell the kids to fend for themselves. Fend for yourself. They've cooked a steak. They have a steak. And the kids are eating whatever they can find. SpaghettiOs or hot dogs or whatever else is in the fridge or in the cabinet. And they're having to prepare that for themselves. And we're talking about still kind of little kids. Not grownish kids. Like still pretty little kids. And that happened on a regular basis. What do you think those kids grow up to believe? They believe that they don't deserve good things. They believe that they're not good enough to get the same as other people. It could be the belief that they're fundamentally not worthy, that they're not good enough, that they don't deserve it. And so, these simple things that parents think are, I don't know what the parents are thinking in that situation. You're not teaching your child a lesson. You're not helping them grow. You're developing personality traits that they have to deal with for the rest of their lives. If you have that inconsistent caregiver who only gives love and action and affection as a reward, or they're volatile and they lash out and you don't know when it's coming, you may become a people pleaser so that you're not getting the bad reactions and getting the praise. So you work for that praise, or maybe you're not even getting praise. Maybe it just is safe. Maybe if I please, if I do what they say, if I act how they want, if I'm quiet, if I don't express my needs, if I don't express these things, I'm not getting in trouble. That may be good enough because you don't want to get in trouble. So it's important to understand what your attachment style is. Like I said, we're going to discuss these more in the upcoming episodes. So be sure you follow along. And if you're really curious, there are some websites out there. Like I found one that was like the Attachment Project. There's a ton of other websites out there. You can Google it, that you can take a little quiz and learn your attachment style in case you don't know. So, if you want to do that before the next episode, so you can figure that part out and listen more and do what you need to do, then by all means, go out there and figure that part out. But it really is an important thing that you should know about yourself. And once you learn what your attachment style is, if it's not secure, then you should work on that because you will be happier. Because it's hard. I mean, when we talk about our fearfully attached, disorganized, whichever label you want to use for it, it's a mix of anxious and avoidant. They want love. They want it, but they're terrified of it. So they get it and then they run away. And then they get it again and then they're scared and they may come back to it. So it's really hard on that person too, because they know that they want that, but they're terrified of it. So you should really figure out what that is, why it's happening, and move forward. And we're going to talk about how you do that in the upcoming episodes. For my producer, Jay Lindley, I'm Leslie Ross. Thank you all for joining us. Please send any questions or comments through the website, heytherapist.com, or email help@heytherapist.com. They may be featured on the show anonymously. Hey Therapist is an SEOK radio production and is for your entertainment purposes only. Thank you for joining us. Make good choices.